Hey, how's it going? So it turns out our brains are extraordinarily good at lying to us. So our brains have two primary locations where facts are stored, and when we first learn a bit of information, it's stored in the hippocampus. Then later on, as we remember the information, it gets rewritten into the brain, and gradually moves from the hippocampus to the cerebral cortex for long-term storage. The problem here is that the process of going from short-term memory to long-term memory involves losing a lot of associated memories. We lose the context. For instance, if you think about something that you learned a long time ago, like the fact that George Washington was the first president of the United States. Your brain knows this to be true, but you probably can't place where you first learned that or what convinced you of its truth. In effect, you've lost your associated memories, but that's not the only way our brains mess with us. For instance, every optical illusion you've ever seen is your brain trying to make sense out of something it doesn't understand. You see, our brains don't just give us the raw sensory information of sight, sound, touch, and so on, and let us figure it out. We are being bombarded with so much information constantly that our brains do a lot of the processing for us without us noticing. One common example you've probably experienced is if you put your hand under very cold water and you weren't expecting it to be cold, you may initially experience the water as being unbearably hot. Your brain isn't so much interested in whether the water is very hot or very cold. It's just trying to relay the information that it's bad as quickly as possible so that you'll move your hand, you big dumb idiot. These kind of sensory illusions are cool, and they're usually harmless and sometimes even helpful in getting you the necessary information as quickly as possible. We'll file those under harmless untruths, but what's much more scary is the way that our brains can misremember memories entirely. If you've ever told a story around someone else who was there, you've probably run into a situation where they'll correct you on some detail of the story. You'll remember it one way, they'll remember it another, and you'll have to negotiate out what actually happened. These discrepancies are more than just a simple difference in perspective. Over time, your brain will lose parts of the information and just fill it in with its own stuff that it just makes up. There was a study done in 1992 where researchers asked students to write down what they had been doing when they first learned that the Challenger space shuttle had exploded the day after it happened. Then, 2.5 years later, they asked the same question again, and they found that although students were just as confident in their stories, only 7% had near-perfect recall of what they had been doing. And 25% of students reported memories, often vivid memories, that bore no resemblance to reality. They were entirely made up. Their brains hadn't merely switched up some small details of the story, but rather written entirely new memories that hadn't happened at all. Inside each and every one of our heads, we have memories, powerful memories, vivid memories that we are sure happened. That didn't. They are completely and entirely fabrications of our imperfect brains. I don't know about you all, but that's pretty scary to me. In a lot of ways, we are our memories. Our personalities, our beliefs, our identities all stem from our lived experience. It's terrifying to know that so much of who we are is constructed from events that may or may not have happened. In a way, we all live lives of little delusions, and that's just something we have to put up with. Don't trust your brain. It's lying to you. To be fair, that was a pretty great schism, but today I'd like to introduce you to a second great schism, also known as the Western Schism.
The usual thing about the reservation was kind of back in a couple of kilometers was they lived in bark, kind of lean-tos they called them in Australia.